now it's recording. We're just going to play a game of Tower, and if it doesn't get all the way, What is your name, and when did you start playing Magic?
My name is Eric Curry. I started playing Magic back in 2007 when I was introduced to it by a good friend around the release of Lorwyn. Though when I first started playing, I mostly played with a mix of like Mirrodin and Ravnica cards, which both of those sets were very story heavy and really got me into the story side of things. I don't actively play Magic anymore. I still keep up anytime there's new set releases, spoilers, anything that has to do with the story. The earliest memory I have of Magic is the first tournament I ever went to, alongside you, with the release of Morningtide. I had no idea how to look up any of the cards ahead of time. I had no idea what I was going into, but after seeing some of the Lorwyn cards, I knew about like Kithkin. Ended up building like a Kithkin tribal deck because we ended up playing Two-Headed Giant for that tournament. And I remember I was like our healing and protection, and you were like our like elemental burn.
My name's Trey. I started playing Magic like 7 years ago? Back in high school. Sophomore year. My earliest memory of Magic was at a friend's house. They said, hey, I don't play this, but you look like you have a duelist heart in you. And so they gave me my favorite deck ever and whisked me on my way.
So my name is Bob, and I started playing Magic because my brother-in-law, Johnny, introduced it to me through a pre-release. I play Magic about once or twice a week. My earliest memory of Magic is my brother-in-law frantically trying to teach me how to build a deck 5 minutes before pre-release starts, and I hold it very dear to my heart because I've never known such panic since.
You all already know how much I love Magic. It should be obvious by now if you watched any amount of my hour-and-a-half long deep dive into Magic's color palette. And that's because it's been a part of my life since I was pretty young. I was born in 1996, 3 years after Magic was created. Of course, it didn't enter my life until about the time I was 8. The very first Magic cards I ever got were from an Invasion starter deck called Spectrum. It was a 5-color deck based mostly in green. It featured the card Yavimaya Barbarian on the front, and that's the image that's seared into my memory as the first Magic card art I had ever seen. This set was released when I was only like 4 years old, though it would be another 4 years before I actually started playing the game. 2004 saw the release of Magic the Gathering's Champions of Kamigawa set, inspired by Japanese folklore and culture. At this time, both my brother and my dad were already big fans of the game, playing together on a regular basis. What drew me in was the wild ways in which the kami, which are the spirits of Kamigawa, were represented. With prior releases, my dad would just buy cards and play them with my brother, and then I would just look at the cool arts. But this set really kept me interested. So much so that I wanted to make my own deck for once. Of course, the first thing I made was built from commons and uncommons that they... Thanks, dog. Of course, the first thing I made was built from commons... Of course, the first thing I made was built from random commons and uncommons that they weren't using. With no real idea of deck building, I constructed an 80-card mess of a green deck, with maybe 20 or so lands, and as many of the cool snake cards as I could fit in there. I remember being enamored with 2 cards in particular, Patron of the Orochi and Endless Swarm. If you know anything about old Kamigawa sets, you know these cards are nonsense. But they were the pinnacle of Magic power to me. And for anyone else who's been with Magic for a while, you also know it's incredibly hard to shake those early experiences. They stick with you. That's why I wanted to do this video with my brother, since he helped me make the thing that we're going to talk about today. The Tower.
I'm Nate, and I started playing Magic around like Odyssey block, 2001 or 2-ish. I play Magic 5 times a week about. I would say the earliest thing I can remember, really, because I can't remember a lot about my early days in Magic, is this blue-white deck that was terrible that I played at home with my family. And I remember that I once played a match against my uncle to name each other's deck. Like, whoever won got to change the name of the other person's deck, and I definitely lost very easily and got my deck changed to the name of Pansy. The first rare that I ever owned was Quirion Dryad. Came from a starter deck kind of thing called Domain. The first rare I ever opened from a booster pack is Draco, and I remember that because it was also the art that was on the packaging of the booster pack. And then one of the coolest cards I ever opened, I opened a Force of Will when I was very new to Magic out of an Alliance booster pack. My favorite Magic card for a long time was Restoration Angel, because it just does all the things that I really enjoy in Magic. It has flash, it's evasive, a threat, and it flickers things, which is like one of my favorite effects. And then I also, nowadays, I'm pretty sure my favorite card is actually Urza's Saga, because I am a huge fan of artifacts and toolboxes. And Urza's Saga like tells you, hey, put a toolbox in your deck. I need you to right now. Here you go. The time that I was most happiest ever playing Magic, and it's the time that I finally qualified for my first Pro Tour. I won a PTQ in Oklahoma City at a GP with a Blue-White Spirits list that was not looking anything close to the other Blue-White Spirits lists that other people were playing.
Yes! Give us 6/6.
Oh, I'm so sad.
Look at our graveyard. It's got 3 of them. What are you doing? 4
Tower is a format from Magic the Gathering that my brother and I created several years ago. For those who are a little newer to the game, a format is essentially just a set of rules. Each format has its own rules that tell you which game pieces to use, what cards are allowed in your deck, and what your life total starts at, or even how many players can be involved. Tower was originally created as a way to play with cards that we felt were too interesting or cool not to be played. Cards that excited us when they were revealed, but didn't end up making it into the cut of competitive play. Or just cards that we really liked.
Tower has its own set of rules, created by the two of us, and we've been playing it for years. Usually in between rounds at tournaments, since nobody wants to play more of the same decks they're already playing in the event. You see, we never really liked EDH or Commander, but we always enjoyed the idea of a format that was made for casual play. So, we decided to make our own format as a way for us to scratch the itch that Commander seemed to scratch for so many other players. Alright. Enough stalling. How does the freaking format work, guys? Well, really quick before Nate explains the rules, I want to express that this is a flexible and modular format. If you want to play it, you can use whatever rules you want. If you don't like the rules that we use, you can change them and play in a way that you like better. They aren't hard and fast rules, they're just the way we play because we find it to be the most fun way.
The basic rules of Tower are as follows. Number 1. Tower is a format that can be played 1v1 or multiplayer, Battle Royale, like Commander. Number 2. Players start with 25 life and 7 cards. No mulligans.
You heard him!
If playing 1v1, the first player skips their first draw step. Otherwise, normal multiplayer rules apply here. Number 3. Here's where it gets juicy. The namesake of the format, the Tower. All players share a library called the Tower, built by one or more of the players, and all players will draw their cards from this library. Towers can be of any size, though it's recommended that you play with at least 200 cards and no more than can fit in like a bundle box for transport and shuffling's sake. It is recommended that you only put single cards of each copy in the deck for variety's sake, though it's not mandatory if your tower has a good reason to play multiples. Number 4. Towers contain no lands. Instead, whenever a player would play a land or put a land card from any zone onto the battlefield, they instead put a card face down as a land with all basic land types and the ability to tap for colorless. This matters for cards like Matter Reshaper, so they tap for any color and colorless, and they work with all land types matters cards, like Corrupt. Number 5. Players also share a graveyard and exile zone. This, coupled with the mechanical implications of sharing a library, is where the game can get very fun, very wacky, and often very broken.
The point of Tower gameplay-wise is to be able to sit down, play with a bunch of cards with wild interactions in a quick game with your friends. And let me be clear, it is really fun. Every player I have ever sat down to play the format with has loved it and has enjoyed their time with it. It's easy to get games in, quick to start playing, and usually doesn't take too long to finish. It doesn't feel bad whether you win or lose, there's no mana flood and there's no mana screw, and everyone has access to all the same set of cards. Is it balanced? Hell no! It's broken as hell. But The all-over-the-place, wacky combination of cards that would never happen anywhere else leads to some of the most unique games of Magic I've ever played. This set of rules allows for crazy interactions that we found as a byproduct of simply just playing Tower. Things like Delve. Since players all share a library and graveyard, milling, discarding, destroying, and simply playing cards all feed the same graveyard. This means Delve cards can get really cheap really fast. At first we were like, oh no, that's too busted. But then we stopped and thought, yeah, awesome. If Commander gets to play Sol Ring, then Tower gets to break Delve cards. Further than they already were, that is. Plus, it adds the bonus of making them technically graveyard hate against your opponents. Cards like Temporal Trespass, 3-mana Time Warp, don't mind if I do. That's your line, Nate.
That's my line. It's me.
Land bounce. These are effects that return lands from play to your hand, and this format has you playing cards face down as lands. So, what happens when you play a card like Deprive, which requires you to return a land to your hand when you cast it? Well, that land goes to your hand, but now it's back to being a normal card. This gives cards like Mina and Den a whole other dimension of power and flexibility that I think is super fun, though it is sometimes a bit fiddly, since you'll be stopping to look at your face down lands over and over again when you draw a card like this.
Scry. What about Scry? You still look at the top X cards in your library. You can still leave some on the top or put some on the bottom. So what's the difference? Well, it won't be you who draws the card you put on top. This turns the innocuous Scry mechanic into a much more powerful Fate Seal. See a board wipe on top when you have a ton of creatures? Put it on the bottom. See an aura on top when your opponent has no creatures? Leave that bad boy on the top for them to draw, look at, and promptly play face down as a land. This gets even more interesting with multiple players and larger scry numbers, where you play this little mini game of deciding who gets to draw what. Cards like Sigiled Starfish take on a whole new meaning.
Certain mechanics just do not work in Tower. It is advised that either do not put them in your tower, or you errata the cards, changing the rules to do something that your playgroup can all agree on that actually does work. For example, the following are a couple of our current rule changes that we use in our tower.
Tutor. Cards that allow you to search your library now instead allow you to search cards you own outside the game. You must have the physical cards on hand for it to work, but you have no limit to the number of cards you can search through outside the game. Cards that allow you to search outside the game also still work like this, unlike in constructed formats like Modern, where you have to use a sideboard for something like this.
Controller versus owner. Since players all share multiple zones, the rules around own versus control in a game can get a little wonky. So we've made some changes to accommodate this. You own cards that are in your hand and on your battlefield, and if you take control of a card, like with Mass Manipulation, you'll take ownership there too. Unless that control is temporary, like Act of Treason or Mind Control. Temporarily exiled cards are owned by the last player to control them, like with Ephemerate, Charming Prince, and Banishing Light. This can still get hazy when referring to other zones where ownership is shared, but generally it works off of what feels intuitive in a game of Magic. Cards brought in from outside the game also follow these rules, but only until the game is over. I hope that was obvious. You have to give people their cards back.
And these are some mechanics that we determined just do not work, which we chose to avoid, and you should too, unless you have a good workaround for any of the issues they cause. Like shuffling. Any card that makes you shuffle the library is a no-go. Luckily, because we wanted to be able to put tutors in the format, we eroded them like we explained before, so that covers most cards that would shuffle your deck. But also, cards like Mind's Desire and Urza Lord High Artificer, you can just choose to ignore the shuffle part of their ability. That's what we would do, and yes, it does change the mechanical play of the card, but Tower's not a competitive format, so fun trumps everything here.
Flashback. Since the graveyard is shared, most flashback variants are discouraged from use in Tower. But when you do use them, it's highly recommended that you only use sorcery speed once to avoid confusion. Otherwise, you have to dictate who is allowed to cast a spell using priority, which can be incredibly confusing in multiplayer and really bogs down what can be an otherwise fun and fast-paced format. If anything is a detriment to the Tower format, it's this right here. Flashback is one of the most iconic abilities in Magic history. Losing out on cards like Lingering Souls or Think Twice is hard, but I believe it is preferable to the absolute headache that rules around a shared graveyard would bring with this mechanic, whether you tried to errata it or not. If after all that, you still want to have Flashback in your Tower, the best option is probably just to have separate graveyards with a shared library still there.
So, do you think this might be a format for you? Now that you have the basic idea of how the format works, do you think that you could build your own tower? No? Don't really know where to start? Well, allow me to make some helpful suggestions. But I promise you, by the end of this video, you will know what you want to do with it. So this is just a skeleton that you're meant to fill in, with all the guts and the blood and the skin. Start with mechanics that we mentioned before. If you like breaking things and using the uniqueness of the rules to their fullest, use delve cards and cards that return lands to your hand. Cards like Tombstalker, Dead Drop, and Hooting Mandrills for delve, and the Moonfolk from original Kamigawa for land bouncing.
Charms and commands are wonderful and flexible cards that can allow players to get out of tight binds while still having proactive play options, all on the same card. Cards like Kolaghan's Command, Riveteer's Charm, and Kaya's Guile. You should not have snapped there.
Board wipes, like Wrath of God, Fumigate, Burn Down the House, and Languish, are important for players to be able to catch back up when someone's board gets out of control. I'd even suggest cards like Planar Cleansing for good measure. Draw card spells. People like drawing cards. A wise person once said,
Magic players love drawing cards more than anything. They see the words draw a card and they shit their pants.
so make sure you have enough divinations, tidings, harmonizes, and fact or fictions.
Niche silver bullet cards. Why? Well, that's the beauty of using cards from your hand as lands. If the card doesn't fit the scenario, you can always play it as a land. However, when it does work, it will feel huge. A nice Pithing Needle, Shatterstorm, or Tranquility, with plenty of naturalizes and disenchants. Next, you'll want to use cards with mechanics that make use of multiplayer in interesting ways. And, just like in Commander, they can lead to some very interesting situations. Cards with mechanics like Assist, Voting, and the Monarch are all highly recommended in this format.
Lastly, we need those big boys. The uncastable 7+ mana cost nonsense cards. The cards that maybe 0.0001% of the whole Magic population has even seen in a game of Magic. Let alone cast themselves. The cards that everyone says, oh, that'll be good in Commander, even though it absolutely won't. The cards that will totally end the game if you could just draw your 9th land. That's your Slinvodas, your Zakamas, and who can forget the various bringers of the various dawns. Wait, those are busted in this form. Of course, the next thing you might ask is, why? Why would I want one of these? What's so special about this format, and why wouldn't I just play Commander instead? That, my friends, brings me to the next part of this video, which clearly has a bit more runtime left to go. You see, the Tower isn't just a format for playing. It's not just one big deck filled with all the cards you never play. It's meant to be a whole lot more than that. That's the one. This one never was. What's the first card you remember owning, or one that just really made an impact?
Desecration Demon.
Desecration Demon. That's my man.
It's the best card in the game. I will have no contest. I love that card.
Okay.
So it's hard to pick one card overall, especially since I feel like I could probably name a specific one for each type. But overall, I think I just would have to pick Deathrite Shaman. It's a little cliche, but aside from Lorwyn's like Kithkin and the Tribals and stuff like that, I really loved Ravnica's Guilds because it's essentially a 2-color tribe, and the Golgari were absolutely my favorite of it, and I feel like he's just a really good embodiment of their shenanigans.
The first card that I remember owning was this card called Sifter Worm. It's 5 generic, 2 green, and I managed to pull 2 of them at this pre-release, and because I pulled 2 Sifter Worms at the Amonkhet pre-release, it was the only time I've ever done well in a pre-release, and I've played Magic for like 5 years now.
What is your best memory from your time with Magic?
I think it was you and me were like doing practice matches, and you were running the standard. You were running like a standard deck at the time, and this was like, again, like 5 years ago. And you were like, yeah, by this time Desecration Demon's like 3 years old, and this vampire deck shit, yeah, this is old news. And with my boomer ass, I came up to the table and said, I'll still throw big rocks at you. And we were halfway through the duel when you said, wow, big rocks fucking hurt.
You stumped me. Is what happened.
The first time that I won my first Modern tournament with Soul Sisters, because not only was it the first tournament I ever actually came first place in, it was an absolute uphill grind against all the meta decks like Tron at the time.
My favorite memory of Magic is actually one that's really recent. It happened at the last pre-release I went to. So, as I said previously, the guy who taught me how to play Magic was Johnny, and for, I think, the first time, and probably the only time, was when I was finally able to actually win a game of Magic with him. It happened only because I pulled really good cards and he didn't, but it was still fun to think about.
I would argue that's not true. You absolutely... I might even put this in the video. No, I would argue that while you did pull a busted pull, you actually didn't draw most of those cards, and you beat me with a sick play using a active treason effect, which gives something haste, but you take it, on your partner's creature to give them haste and kill us.
Yeah.
That's a good play. That's a really good play.
And it really was a nice moment that showed me how far I came, because whenever I think about when I learned to play Magic, I was like, okay, and then I tapped this mana, right?
If you can recall one, what is a moment from a game of Magic you played that stuck out to you since?
It was when it was like, 3-ish years ago, you and me went to a draft, and we both looked at this one, like, weird-ass wizard card with a bunch of birds on it that said, hey, copy everything on the field, but make it a 1/1 of itself. And we both said, like, oh my god, I do not know the combo, but it was like, yo, if you do this correctly, you just burn your opponent in, like, 2 turns.
No, the Return to Ravnica pre-release where we went and got Korean food beforehand, and I kept accidentally calling the Golgari Bulgogi. Gerard the Bulgogi Lich Lord was a very good slip-up constantly, and all of my opponents thought it was a bit, and it was not a bit. It was not a bit.
The first iteration of our very first tower was solely constructed from cards rotating out of Standard. This was before the advent of the Pioneer format, but late enough into the life of Modern that most Standard cards didn't make it into the cut of that format. Around the time of Tower's creation, Shadows over Innistrad block had just rotated out of Standard, so it mainly consisted of cards from the Tarkir block, Shadows over Innistrad block, and the Battle for Zendikar block. This would have been around 2017 somewhere. We also happened to have a ton of partially used sleeves in random amounts, not even enough for 40-card draft decks. It seemed like such a waste to throw those away, which made them a perfect fit for our newly created format.
It's now 2022, over 5 years since the inception of this format, and the purpose has changed, if only slightly. You see, a simple video called Gonti Loves Sophie, created by Ristic Studies, completely changed the way I value the cards I own and what I do with them. It reminded me of something I had been feeling about Magic for a couple years now. Ever since the pandemic took away that sense of community that Magic had been building for me for like 18 years, I've begun to value my memories and experiences with Magic far more than just the gameplay and card design.
One could find themselves with a binder full of signed cards, altars, and favorites that they could show off as their MTG scrapbook, but that just seems so stale and stagnant. Magic cards were meant to be played. They were meant to be in the hands and on the battlefield. I want a scrapbook of my MTG memories that can be experienced and played, but not just my memories. Memories from all the people that we play Magic with. All the people that have been a part of our Magic experience. A collaborative scrapbook of our love for Magic. Over time, Tower has become that for us, replacing random bulk rares from Standards past with cards that mean something to us. Cards that cause us to recall moments in games past.
Carnage Tyrant reminds me of the first PPTQ that I won. For those of you wondering, that's preliminary Pro Tour qualifier, whatever. The finals was me playing a green-red monsters deck versus my opponent who was playing a blue-white approach control deck. The point of their deck was to stop me from winning long enough for them to cast the card Approach of the Second Sun twice, thereby winning the game. And my goal was to beat them down with big creatures before they could do that. It went down to Game 3 in the match. They had 1 win, I had 1 win. And good old Carney T was my ticket to victory, with its hexproof to stop their removal and uncounterability to stop, well, counterspells. Its massive 7 power can close out the game in a measly 3 attacks, all by itself. Unlike most people playing this deck, I was playing a total of 4 copies of our boy Carnage Tyrant in the main deck and sideboard combined. And in that final game, I drew all 4 copies, playing them one at a time with my opponent's limited ways to answer. One by one, I would play one of them, and then they would fumigate. All except for the 4th one, which I killed my opponent with as they desperately searched for an answer. See, that's the one. There's like a whole, it's like what, 200 Carnage Tyrants? You know what, that's what my opponent said whenever I played my 4th Carnage Tyrant. What, 200 Carnage Tyrants? 200? Are you sure? Is that legal?
The Tower is filled with stories like this. Almost every card can cause us and our friends to recall a time where that card was the key to winning, losing, or some crazy interaction happening in a game of Magic. The purpose of Tower is to bring out the aspects of Magic that promote community and the social nature of the game.
So with all this in mind, I'd like you to come along as we bend and break the simple idea of Tower, stretching what the format can be even further than just a fun format filled with your favorite cards. We're going to increase the breadth of cards you can add to the Tower. I want you to expand your reasons for choosing which cards you put into your Tower, from old standard cards to anything that evokes a memory or will make someone smile. That's why we're going to suggest some very wacky things to put into and to do to your Tower. If you end up wanting to create your very own Tower, then you should give these a try. Let's put in some wacky stuff. First up is silver border cards. So many fun and interesting designs have come out of the unsets of Magic. If you don't know what these are, they're a series of joke sets designed to be purchased and played casually. They have silver borders to show that they cannot be played in tournaments. These cards, especially the more recent ones, have made me happy and have some wonderful moments attached to them, like running up and down a tournament hall to gain 80 plus life from a high five, or practicing my throwing technique with a slaying mantis in between rounds. They deserve to see play and to create more memories like them. So we've decided to start putting our favorite unset cards into our Tower. Three-Headed Goblin is just too silly and fun to pass up. Urza, Academy Headmaster, deserves to be played somewhere for the sheer audacity of Wizards of the Coast. And, for the brave ones out there, I dare you to put Rules Lawyer in your Tower.
There's also the playtest cards. Similar to Silver Border, the Mystery Booster product had special playtest cards that are not legal in any tournament format. They look pretty wacky and have strange abilities. Tower is a wonderful place for these cards to finally get the playtime that they deserve, so they can create the fun games that they were meant to. Biting Remark, You're in Command, and Zyru Spectre are wonderful ideas for cards that need to be played by more players.
There's also custom cards. For any of you who know me well, you'll know that I love game design and I'm obsessed with card and board game design specifically. Creating my own Magic the Gathering format and redesigning the entirety of the original comic block should include you into that. Well, in addition to those things, I have designed a couple of my own Magic the Gathering sets and printed them off as proxies that we can play with. Some of the designs that I like the most from these sets have made their way into the Tower to add to the insane variety of experiences that someone can happen upon while playing. I've designed some mechanics that I really like and I want to play more with, like Blood Smell. Blood Smell?
Dude, Blood Smell, that makes sense.
Such a good mechanic. There are some mechanics that I've made that I really want to play with more, like Blood Spell and Omnipresence. You may be saying,
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. It's a casual format. You can do that. Sounds great. But you know what? That's not enough for me. Towers show off the personality of those who helped build it. Sure, the cards you choose say a lot, but they don't directly show the experiences you've had and how you have impacted the cards in the Tower. If someone else picks it up and plays it with other people when you aren't around, who will tell the stories? How will they see what the deck has been through?
I'm so glad the version of you that I made up in my head for this video read right from the script, because we're going even further. There's so much more we can do. This is meant to be a playable scrapbook, is it not? Oh yeah. What can we do with this? So much. If you hold your value in Magic cards based on their money value, or you like to keep your cards in perfect condition, then you may want to avoid this next section. Because now we're getting into the process of adding character to our cards over time. Yes, we're going to be writing on some of our cards, but not for no reason, of course. To add texture, to add narrative, to mark our experiences. How? In the following way. The first thing you can do is...
You can just die.
This is what happens when you make a tower, guys. The first thing you can do is sign your favorite cards. The more people that I play Magic with, the more friends I have who learn to love and enjoy the game. The more tales I hear about their early days, and the more favorite cards that I get to hear. Since the Tower is a collaborative scrapbook, the very least we can do is have a copy of everyone's favorite card. But how will we know which cards are which player's favorites? Easy! We have them sign their favorite card so everyone knows who's responsible for putting that card in. The plan here is to collect the souls of people you meet and forever trap them in the binding contract of the Tower. Ideally, I'll be able to get some signed copies of favorite cards from pros and content creators that I really like. Professor, Spice, Sam from Mystic Studies, I'm looking at y'all. If you saw my email, please respond. I'll pay for the shipping if you just send me a copy of your favorite card signed.
You can also use this Sharpie for record keeping. Inspired by what I saw in Ristic Studies' video on the Gonti Commander deck, cards that have you flipping coins for results, like Mana Crypt or Mirror March, can physically keep track of all the results of every coin flipped. Cards like Door to Nothingness and Helix Pinnacle can also keep track of who wins or loses, and how many times they do. There are a ton of types of record keeping that can be done this way. What's the largest Colonian Hydra someone's ever made? The possibilities are endless.
You can also write down your memes and inside jokes. If when playing your tower you run up against the same silly scenarios, or your friends and you begin to have recurring jokes surrounding a certain card, like Avacyn's Secret Vigilance, then you can mark those, permanently cementing your terrible humor and lame jokes for the record of your tower.
Okay, but what if you and all of your friends agree that a card is too good or too crappy, but you really want it in the tower? If only the card was just a little different. Well, not to fear, Sharpie's here. Just go ahead and change it yourself. Use some whiteout, labels from a label sticker, or whatever you gotta do, and make the card do what you want it to do. This here is our copy of Triad of the Fates. We really liked the design, but every time we played it, it never could do anything, because it was just too slow. So we marked off the tap symbol for its first ability. So now it plays a lot better. It's still kind of bad, but it's much, much more fun. Say you have an Oko that you really wish wouldn't literally take over every game it's in. Make it 4 mana. Change its +2 to a +1, and its +1 to a 0. You can do whatever you want. It's your card, as long as you don't mind permanently marking it.
I'm sure that last section was very stressful for some of you. But remember, it's all optional. You only need to do the things that sound fun to you. If you don't like marking your cards, then don't. Some cards are special, and the idea of messing them up is kind of upsetting. But maybe you still want them to be played. It doesn't seem fair that your Omnath locus of creation that you opened from your very first pre-release would just sit in a binder doing nothing. Put those cards in your tower. Let them create new experiences while still holding the value of their older stories.
So a while back I won these all-black foil planeswalkers that Magic had done some special promotion for, and I would rather have cash than them. They didn't have any use in competitive play, which was what I was most interested in at the time. So I decided to go and figure out who would buy them locally, and I had a guy that I found online, and he was like, yeah, I'm in Omaha area, I'll get them from you. He was messaging me about them, and then we decided on a price, and he was like, great, I'm so excited to play these in my Commander deck. And that was when it first hit me, just how important it is to be able to actually get use out of cards all the time. Because I saw these as a collector's item only, essentially. They either stay in binders or in their little box forever. But he was so excited to play with them, and it was like, that's just exactly what these cards needed to do. That's what they're for. Cards are just meant to be played. That's it.
For the longest time, I had this Ugin sitting in a binder. I didn't want to sell it. It was special to me. But I was too scared to play it anywhere because I didn't want to hurt it or lose it. If you don't know what this is, or why it's so special, it's an alternate art Ugin that you could only get from the pre-release of Fate Reforged. I went to the midnight pre-release for that set on my birthday, January 17th. They gave out these tiny little Ugin's Fate promo packs that only had 2 cards in them, and they were randomized between 36 possible cards that you could get, with all varying rarities and alternate arts. There was one possible super rare option, and that's this alternate art Ugin. And I opened it at midnight on my birthday in 2015. It's such a simple thing, but it was so unlikely and so rare it just felt perfect. That night, it was a really fun night with my friends and family enjoying the game that we love so much. This is what Magic is about, and let your tower reflect those moments. Ready for some shit posting? What, you thought using a Sharpie on your cards was us memeing on you? This is serious business! What's next, you ask? Add cards from other games to the tower? It's your tower, nobody can stop you from putting pot of green in it. If someone draws it, they can play it.
Which lets me draw 2 more cards from my deck.
If you rat bastards want to put good old Bill in your tower, how would anyone know? If you think I'm joking, just look at my tower. It absolutely has both of those cards in it.
Disclaimer, if you actually want to put cards from other games in your tower, try to remember this handy rule. You are playing Magic Gathering. The card you put into your tower is from another game. If you played it as intended in the game it's from, it still needs to function intuitively in Magic. For example, Pot of Green. In Yu-Gi-Oh! You just play it, draw 2 cards, then it goes to the graveyard. No cost, no special rules. This card can work fine following that logic in Magic. Is it broken? Absolutely. But hey, Magic has an ancestral recall. So...
It's uncount. No! Why would you betray me, Carnage Tyrant? After everything we've been through. Oh, shit.
I'm Steve Perigo, and I started playing in 1999.
About how often do you play Magic?
Daily. The first time I was exposed to Magic is my earliest memory of it. I was in a game store to get Dungeons and Dragons supplies, and I just got enthralled watching a Friday Night Magic in progress, and at that point it just stuck that I needed to try it. At the time of my first exposure, the most recent set was in the Invasion block, Invasion Odyssey area, because those Psychotog decks from Odyssey. The first card I remember owning is a miscut Blastoderm from a theme deck that I bought from some random store that had seconds, and all the forests and islands and Blastoderms were miscut.
What's Blastoderm do?
It's a 5/5 for 2 and 2 green with fading.
That's it? It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew that card was good. But what would you say your favorite Magic card is?
I've had a lot over the years, but I still go back to Upheaval as my favorite card. It was the key to my first Psychotog deck. My favorite memory of Magic is actually a match that ended in a draw at a regionals. And it was myself versus Rick Paling with win and into the top 4 at a regionals. And it ended in a draw because we couldn't get either one of us to concede.
What kind of decks were you playing that caused that?
He was playing black-white mid-range, and I was playing the red-white-blue Angel Fires deck.
And if you can recall one, what is a moment from just a single game of Magic that has stuck out to you?
It's a Friday Night Magic top 4 versus James Russell. He's playing fairies, and I'm playing Burnt Toast, which was the 4-color deck of the era. And in my draw step, he flashes in a Misbind Click to tap me out, and so I knock on my deck and say, all I need is Volcanic Fallout. I cast my cantrip, there's Volcanic Fallout, uncounterable, and then he had nothing that he could champion.
What are some standout memories when you think of Nate and I first learning to play Magic?
So when you and Nate started playing Magic, we had we didn't have all of the tuned decks. We just built with whatever we could get. And so we had a family home tournament. And it included me and you and Nate and your mother and Justin. I think that's some of the best memory I have of you guys learning, because it taught you deck building skills with a limited pool. It was great.
And also Mom won.
Yes, she did.
Yes, I won.
Yeah, see, she won.
Tower can be simply another form of Magic. It can be a scrapbook of your favorite Magic memories. It can be a living trade binder or your meme folder. It can be literally anything you want it to be, as long as whatever that is, it makes you happy.
If anything, what does Magic mean to you?
So one of the main things that I always greatly enjoyed about Magic was the actual social aspect of it, actually going to tournaments, actually sitting across from my opponent. It's why I could never really get into like Arena or MTGO. But the actual social aspect of it, talking about the lore with people, talking about brewing decks and stuff like at a tournament. Like there's so many people that I won't forget from the tournaments that I've been to, just because we sat and had a long conversation about what we really liked about the set, or like we ended up pulling like a really great card in our sealed pool, and we're just discussing like what we could do with that, and just like how we thought that card was going to do in standard, modern, etc. going forward. Just conversing about the game became a lot more interesting and a lot more important to me than really even playing it.
I think Magic for me, for the past couple of years, has meant one of the only ways that I could make friends with people outside of who I already know. Because I actually drive like 69 miles every Saturday to go to a college town to play with an old coworker of mine from 2 years ago, because we bonded over Magic, and the rest of her girlfriends also play Magic, and so we all sit there and play Magic, and we've done this for like a year now. And I've noticed that at my new job too, I've had a lot of fun trying to explain to 60-year-olds who can't speak English very well how to play Magic, because when I was learning to play Magic, it really helped me with my English skills, because learning to read like really fast, like to make a deck like at a pre-release really fast really helped me with my English reading skills. And so was like memorizing a lot of things, because not all of us are walking memory banks of every Magic card in existence.
Sorry.
Yeah, you better be. but but I'm getting there. And so I would say, cheesily enough, Magic for me is a great way to make friends.
All right, and yeah, Magic means so much to me because in the recent weeks that I've been playing Master Duel, I have never appreciated a more balanced game in my life. No matter what state the game's in right now, it can't be as bad as that fucking OCG nightmare. So, yeah.
Magic is my favorite thing in all of life and the world. It is my favorite thing. It's what I want to be doing all the time. It's what makes me happiest out of everything. It's what makes me feel fulfilled. Maybe the second most thing in life that makes me feel fulfilled overall. Like, it just does everything I need. Magic is life.
One of the things that sticks with me about my time playing Magic is the growth both of my relationship with my kids and our ability to build off of each other, not just in the game, but in our relationship as part of playing the game. And so as each new format, set, tournament structure comes along, I know that there's something that we can bond over our either like or dislike of it. And it's something I look forward to, because I know that that's yet another thing that we can share.
Get me out of this. No, that does not. That does the opposite. Play this face down. Play attack you for 5. Blade Slicer. Go Dad. Oh no. Sure. I can find something. I can get out of this, Dad. I can get out of this. Oh hey, I didn't see you guys there. You were watching the video the whole time? That's crazy. No, for real, thanks for watching this video. It's really great that you guys came here. This, I don't know, maybe I say this more than like on some of the other videos too, but I'm really excited for this one. I really like this video. This one means a lot to me. It gives me some of those similar vibes that the old Magic video about all the color pie gave me, where it's something I'm very invested in and I think about a lot. And so I really hope you guys like it. I really hope that if just a couple people do it, that's great, but some of you guys actually make your own towers. And if you do, just, if you're a part of the Discord, post it in there. Talk about it with us. Like,
I want to hear about it.
Yeah, Nate wants to hear about it. Like, join our Discord if you haven't already. And if you have, make a tower and tell us what it's like. And tell us all your Magic memories for you guys who've played Magic. Like, but yeah, thank you for watching the video. We stream every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. That's pretty consistent. We have a TikTok. We're posting videos on there again. It's right here on the screen. Me and Christian have Twitters. Nate has a Twitter. Nate has a Twitch. He sometimes streams. I think it's been a while, but he still sometimes streams. So yeah, I'm still working on that Mortal Kombat video. It's going to be a while. Working on a conspiracy theory video that I think is really tight, super cool. What else is there?
We're in the beginning of working on another video together.
Right. I swear to God, I will make that Garfield video. Just give me some time. Give me some time, man. Give me some time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell to summon invaders into your world. Bye! I'm encouraging this maidenless behavior!